The next thing that you guys are going to deal with is color, the addition of color. The Bislip is a little tricky as far as application, which is a lot of what we'll be dealing with, because this is an example of texture that I built up with the slip. That's just the texture, it's just the white slip. And then this is a piece where I've built up the texture, and then I've gone into it and added color. But you see, this could be lots and lots of different colors of slip, you know, where it's layers and layers of little tiny brush strokes, but not just the whites. You know, it could be blue slip and then red slip and then yellow slip. I wanted to show you these just to kind of show you what you can do. The texture is the on-go with a big brush where I've sort of slapped it onto the greenware and gotten this great brush stroke. And then this purple, this was probably fired a couple times, but this purple is Mike's clear on top. And where it pools in the texture, it gets sort of darker. So just, sort of food for thought about the on-go for things that haven't been fired yet. And then how a glaze can sort of, when it goes up over a surface and it kind of breaks, it thins out. Mm-hmm. It thins out on the high areas because glossy, shiny, clear is going to melt the most. Whenever you look at a glaze, if you are looking at a glaze that's completely transparent and it's very, very shiny, then you know in the kiln it gets very fluid. It melts a lot. Tendency to run, so you have to be careful about thickness when you're applying it. If it's too heavy, it'll run, gravity. So with a glaze like that, where it meets the corner of something, it's going to pull where the gravity is pulling it, and so your edge is always going to be kind of thinner. The Bislip I'll get into in a minute. I want to talk about these commercial surfaces. There's certain colors that we just can't make. Georgie's does have, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 mason stains that are reds, and I have yet to see how they work with our chemicals. I don't know how industry does it, but they do. So for the things like lipstick red, some pinks, mostly reds, oranges, purple, really bright purples, we get these commercial underglazes. They're very expensive, you guys. This jar is $40, $45. Part of the reason that they're expensive is that they do go to Conten, which it used to be getting a red without copper being involved with the reduction atmosphere, and I don't want to confuse you. But reds at high temperature usually just don't happen. These go to a high temperature, but also when they are painted onto the surface and used by themselves, the color is very strong. Whereas most commercial underglazes, if you don't put a layer of clear on top to melt over the surface and bring out the color, they're usually extremely pasty by themselves. I wanted the students here to have the option of having dry color, in combination with some shine. If all of your surfaces are glossy, then everything sort of reads the same. And glossy isn't always what a piece needs. So I recommend that you try these without immediately putting a clear on top. There are tiles for all of these things, you guys, but they're, again, like the mason stains. The commercial underglazes put food coloring in so that they look about the color that they're going to be.
Because I heard you talking about it. This is underglaze with gloss, with clear on half of each one. no glaze on the other side.
Oh, wow, thank
So
you,
it's like matte
yes.
and clear if you want to see the difference.
Thank you.
So there isn't a ton of difference as far as the strength of the color.
No, not much.
But this does show that you've got to be like the
Yeah.
jar will tell you 3 flowing coats.
Which I did not do.
And you see, if you absolutely know that you're going to put a clear on top, you have to be absolutely sure that you get 3 coats on, because basically the glaze acts like water on a white t-shirt. So it will, you can apply it, you can fire it, you can say, oh, that's got to be thick enough. Then you go and you put a clear on it, and suddenly it's
just
fired, and you can
spreads
see
out.
the clay coming through. So in terms of what the firing strength is, you won't see that. So it's just a good rule of thumb. Make sure that you get 3 good coats. I
love those
appreciate
underglaze.
that.
Christina's class is the first one that I took here, and so I'm still a low fire fan. I
That's-
still low
that
fire
looks
so
really
many
great.
things because I like the colors so much better.
Yeah. So I'm feeling like somebody has added water to this one, and I'm kind of not happy about that. Generally, anything that's commercial, and of course, commercial meaning they're going to have this nice little label with directions. When they're in liquid form, I think that they add something to these that I think is sort of like Carol syrup. It helps a suspender. They never complete. Well, no, I won't say that, because I've had jars where like half has been solidified, but they stay in suspension very well. They are easy to apply, and what you'll find is what you're up against with application is that your bisque clay is going to be super thirsty. The minute your brush hits the surface, the water is gone, and you haven't even gotten the glaze onto it yet. So with the commercial stuff, I think that there is something in there that helps you move the glaze along when you're applying it. And so in the jar, when you first start using these, it's a little bit confusing because they seem very, very thick because of the suspender. It's not anything that's chemical that's making the glaze. It's simply something, it's a vehicle that helps application. So if you want to use them more in a watercolor way, take a little bit out of the jar, put it in a container and add some water, but don't add water to the container. See, this one has more body to it right away.
Didn't go right in.
Yeah. You see the difference? It's, and you see how you can move it. I'm continuing. I'm not real crazy about these test tiles because they're not mine, and I think they're high fire. But that's okay. It's just for application. So with these, as I said, there are tiles, but what you see is kind of what you get. They can be mixed together, and they also won't move. So this is the thing, if you want to do a pattern or an image, a face, detail, and you want where you're putting the color to stay right there, you don't want any surprises of it moving down. Bisque slip stays right where you put it. Commercial underglaze stays right where you put it. If you do a pattern or an image where you're using a lot of colors next to each other, I always say fire it first, because if you go and you start applying a clear on top of that, your brush is full of water and glaze, and you're dragging it across the surface, and don't you think you would start sort of dragging that color? So you want to get that stuff permanent. Then you put an application, and you might decide that you don't want to cover the whole thing with clear. You know, you could do a lot of detail work with the dry surfaces, fire it, and then maybe go back in and add clear or colored clear in some areas, but not all areas. You know, I mean, it expands it even more. You know, if you start out with dry color, then you fire it, then you can go back and enhance all of that or leave some of it as it is. So the underglazes are kept in that cabinet, the bottom cabinet on the top shelves. And just like really with all this stuff, I should have prefaced this with some of my rules. I don't want you guys working directly from the containers. Now the oxides I'm not worried about, but definitely these guys, partly because if one of these tips over, we're talking about $40. And there's one jar of each color for the whole studio for the term. So if you want your whole card piece to be maroon, you might want to go to George's and get your own, because something like that would take a whole jar. So there you can see that they're purples. There's some nice colors. There are a couple of different oranges. There's some greens. There's a blue-green flat color. Okay, but there again, you could use this as a wash. You could take, let's see.